Hello, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Happy to see you again. Some of you, I hope that some of you will be seeing me again after our session on Tuesday, CAINFRA sponsored sessions. This is the second and last one that we are sponsoring and contributing. I am in Spain, by the way. I'm the CEO of CAINFRA, a company dedicated to capacity building and knowledge dissemination, PPP best practice knowledge dissemination, quite focused on the CP3P training program with some other PPP focused courses. Please go to our booth and take a look to our products, trainings, and experiences, and so on. So thank you again to WAPPP for inviting us to organize and contribute with the organization of one of the panels. And the first thing I'm going to do is to introduce very briefly the people that are in the panel, the experts that are with us to discuss about central PPP units and the challenges and the key factors for the success of this type of units. So we have Catherine Sandoval from Colombia, from the National Planning Department. She is the director of the private participation in infrastructure program. To the effect of our panel is like the PPP unit. She will explain later on to what extent they are acting as a central PPP unit. Previously, she has been advising several ministers and acted as a consultant of the United Nations. We have also Ankur Suarez Aleman is a senior PPP specialist at the Inter-American Development Bank. He is leading the economic agenda on PPPs at the IDB. He's working in the PPP unit, in the PPP team of the IDB, which is incorporated into the Vice President of Countries. And he's quite focused in upstream activity, also doing some downstream and project specific. No, but he's quite centered in something very relevant for all of us, which is upstream. No, it's like the everybody is saying, or ourselves think, that we need to pay more attention to upstream. He has a number of degrees, etc. But one of the things that, if he allows me, I would like to highlight is his certification on the CP3P program with us, thanks to the IDB for trusting us to train in the CP3P program, the core of the PPP team at the IDB, and one of the partners that we have, one of the members of the program is precisely Ankur. We have Adilio Cele from the Ministry of Economy in Paraguay. He's the vice minister. He's working, he's acting as deputy minister within the STP, the Technical Secretariat of Economic and Social Development. As I typically say, it would be like the planning agency, like DMP in Colombia. That would be in the case of Paraguay. No, he has been dealing a lot of years with PPP from the very inception of the strategy and PPP approaches in Paraguay, before leading the PPP unit within the Department for the Public Investment System within the Ministry of, within the Treasury, within the Ministry of Finance. And also, Adilio, you are certified, no, in the CP3P for Foundation, if I'm not wrong, no? Okay, and
that's
and
right.
then
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. And we have Javier Encinas from UK. He's representing, he's working in the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, IPA, the authority of QA that dealing with PPPs, but not only with PPPs, but with infrastructure planning and management in general. He, in fact, is the deputy head of the international team and a very good friend from a big number of years. Okay, let me share my screen. Let me share my screen rapidly. I will have in the screen from time to time the agenda, so everybody can follow up where we are. And let me introduce very briefly the subject matter. We are here to talk not only about central PPP units, which are PPP units, PPP teams that are central to the PPP governance, and among other things, acting as a central agency for the whole of the government. But also we like to say that the key thing is to have PPP units if they want to be central, that should be transforming, should be really adding value and acting effectively. And that was the focus of the paper that we did under the direction, in CAINFRA, under the direction precisely of Anchor, and you can see and you can access to it in the in the website of the, with different resources, not only in the library of IDP, but also specifically in the WAPPP library. It's only in Spanish so far. Maybe later on can be accessible in English, but I think it can be worth it if you want to take a look. So what is a central unit that is transforming? And for us, it's a PPP unit under the general concept that is institutionalized, properly institutionalized, with certain material autonomy and level of authority, and that is central, is relevant in the area, in the institutional framework related area, related to assurance and coordination of the PPP programs. There are several areas as described, for example, under the CP3P standards in an institutional framework, and one paramount area, big area of responsibilities, assurance and quality assurance and coordination. And a central PPP unit has to be there, has to be relevant. And to be relevant, according to all our investigations and opinions and discussions, it is important that this unit has a presence in the main, most relevant functions related to the responsibility of assurance, which is knowledge management or capacity building, policy, and a relevant participation in the quality control of the process, the gatekeeping, the approvals. My friends, the audience, we have here, for us, according to the standards that we have developed, 3 clear cases of PPP central units that are transforming, that are effective, not redundant, significant, adding value, and this is what I would like to comment with them. So basically the contents of the conversation is going to be about the main factors of the design, which are basically 3 factors according to our approaches. One is the location and allocation, and the design of the configuration, the creation, if it's a law, if it's just an organigram within another entity, whatever. Then we have the second one, which is the most relevant, which is the functions and the interfaces with other agencies, etc. How it is incorporated within the PPP cycle, our unit. And the third one is resources and fund requirements. That is for us the 3 main elements of the design. And this is what we are going basically to discuss with our experts. Talking about the first element, location and configuration, I will let Anchor to describe his thoughts and also the outcomes that we came across when we did the research about the PPP central units in Latin America. Where are these units in Latin America generally located? In which manners are they established? And also, how relevant can we, Anchor, think that is these factors? So please, let's see how can you explain these things for us.
Well, thank you, Andres, and it's a pleasure for me today to be here with all of you. Thanks to the World Association of PPP Units for the invitation, and to my colleagues here, Catherine, Adilio, and Javier. It's always a pleasure to share discussion on a panel with you. And Andres, as you perfectly know, one major finding of this report that was delivered for the LAC PPP network, and which is kind of in line with most of the experience worldwide, is that this is not one of those one-size-fits-all case of situations, right? And we have a kind of a clear idea today with our 3 colleagues. This is something that explains us in the regional experience, which shows very different institutional arrangements when it comes to PPP units and its roles. But more importantly than the location is the interinstitutional coordination and the responsibilities and mandate, as we think we'll be discussing later on. And actually, this belongs to a much broader discussion, which is how efficiently we develop the infrastructure from the planning stages to where it's precisely delivered through different procurement methods and the coordination between them. Basically, the integration between the investment and the budget cycles and the coordination in a sequential process between the national public investment systems and the PPP units is key, and how we develop these optimal integration schemes for the PPP unit. Well, there must be a clear procedural flow on how we plan the development of the infrastructure, from the identification of the needs to the project execution through the most appropriate bidding process in each case. And basically, this is something that needs to be aligned with the national public investment systems or similar by each country, and preferably to be reflected in an infrastructure plan with a long-term view, bipartisan support, and so on. And also the ability of the long-term resources to address these projects should or require us to have a much broader coordination with those in charge of budget and finance. Because as you know, the PPP unit can be in the office of the president, or under the Ministry of Finance, or a different ministry, or as a part of an independent or of a different agency, government agency. And that doesn't mean that because where they are located, they are going to be successful or not. It means that based on how they are interrelated to the rest of the ecosystem that is responsible of the infrastructure development of a country, we're going to see some results and some other, right? So basically, the coordination is needed between the organization responsible for whole public investment. I guess like my colleagues here can explain a lot on that, and the organization that is in charge not only of the PPPs but also of the development of the traditional public works and the institutions related to the public budget. So to sum up, so it's not about the location. It's how the PPP unit interrelates to the institutional framework and the scope, responsibilities, and resources, where I think we can discuss later on in the different topics, right, Andre?
Yes, right, perfect. That is crystal clear. I think as a conclusion on the research that we did for IDB, for the WAPPP, no? The WAPPP. That, by the way, the next week is going to be your Congress, no? The Congress of the WAPPP.
Thanks for the promotion. I didn't want to bring it up so soon, but thank you so much. It's going to be next week.
If you want to explain it, if we have time enough at the end, and maybe even you can share a link or whatever. We will discuss later on and hear from you what is doing IDB in this sense of policy and good practice in general, no? Good practice dissemination. So location, yes, we saw in Latin America that and worldwide as well, because we analyze other papers and analysis, that is mostly common in Ministry of Finance. But as opposed to some papers previous to our paper, they are suggesting that it's paramount to be Ministry of Finance. We think that is not true. We think that it doesn't matter where you are, to the extent that the roles and the functions are really relevant, are paramount, are creating value, and that you care about the interfaces with other entities, especially interfaces with respect to national public system. So let's go to that. Let's go to the second design factor, which is the most relevant. The design of the scopes of responsibilities and functions of the unit that we want to create, we have created, and the interfaces between that unit to be really central and to be really effective, transforming. Okay, and we will here just review with our three guests, with our three speakers from the experiences of their own countries. So you can see in this small figure how we did define, coming also from CP3P standards, but with some tweaks, what we did for the paper for IDB, that we see three clear big areas for a PPP unit to be transformational, transforming an effective policy and guidelines, capacity management, and quality control. And we should see that our unit is really covering a material role there, okay? So we can start with Catherine. Catherine, which are the functions of your PPP unit that you are covering? And also, how are you handling in your country the coordination in the process of preparing an approval with other significant PPP units or central agencies?
Thank you for your question, Andres, and thanks to all the organizers and colleagues for participating in this panel. Some of the main function of the PPP program within the DMP, DMP stands for National Planning Department in Colombia, are first the definition of policies and guides. For example, value for money evaluation, national guidelines, and risk management national guidelines, both with the support of CAINFRA. Second, the project's revision and approval of the project PPP, being in charge of the value for money analysis, that is assessment the convenience of delivering of project of PPP. The program has issued 52 PPP approvals in 4 sectors so far. So the approval of the contractual financial clauses and the model financial and the risk matrix of PPP projects that are being managed by the Ministry of Finance and Public Credit. And the concept on the public-private comparator and the cost-benefits analysis is managed by the DMP. Both of them considering the transversality, coordination, and follow-up. Third, leading the training processes in the different levels of the Colombian government. We have organized 100 training sessions for the public sector entities and training about 400 official employees. And finally, I advisory and support in preparation and structuring, supporting territorial and national entities with the development of infrastructure project structuring to be executed through the PPP scheme by the advisory and co-funding the use of PPPs. We have supported projects in a variety of sectors with a total estimated invest of $10.5 million. And 19 projects with the national entities and 11 with the territorial entities.
Good. So basically, I think you are a clear example about a unit that is covering or has a significant presence in the 3 main areas of quality management, quality assurance, no, within the system. How, if I'm not wrong, the DMP, because it's the planning department, is managing as well the analysis, the helping in the prioritization of projects as project solutions, regardless whether they are a public investment or they are going to be a PPP. So you are at the heart of the national public investment system, no? How do you think is relevant? To what extent do you think is relevant the coordination, the integration that Anchor was mentioning before between the decisions about good projects, good public investments, and the PPP decisions? I mean, do you think it's properly? It is really necessary to integrate the decisions of a public investment and the convenience of a project as a PPP?
Yes. It's necessary coordinating this decision in the Colombia. I think that Ministry of Finance and DMP coordinating these activities for decision if the financial investors and project.
So, Ministry of Finance is dealing with some approvals, no, with some decisions,
yes,
or some analysis, like fiscal impact, for example, no. And
yes.
you are more centered in the part of the PPP analysis, the convenience of the PPP analysis, no?
Yes. The Ministry of Finance and Public Credit approval the contractual clauses, financial model, and risk matrix of all the projects PPP.
Perfect, excellent. And then the coordination with the public investment decisions is granted because you are covering, no? You are covering cost-benefit analysis and
Yes.
as well as the PPP, no? So everything is under the DMP. Good.
Yes.
How about you, Adilio? Can you explain us the functions of your PPP unit? To what extent you are covering all these areas in a relevant manner, and also how are you handling the coordination between different agencies?
Yeah, thank you very much, Andres, and greetings to all from Asunción, Paraguay. It's a pleasure for me to share this panel with all my friends and colleagues. Thank you very much to the World PPP Associations of PPP units and professionals, and to CAINFRA. Well, we have to say that in Paraguay, we have at least, let's call it 3 PPP units. We have the Ministry of Public Works, have a strategic projects divisions or the direction, which is the leader for implementing or for proposing the projects. We have the Ministry of Finance with a PPP unit, which is a department within the General Public Investment Directorate. And we have the PPP unit at the Planning Secretariat, where I'm working now for about a year and a half. Our PPP unit, because of the PPP law in Paraguay, has many of the roles that you already pointed out, like capacity management, policy and guidelines, and quality control. We work with the Ministry of Public Works and any other entities from national or subnational levels, which would like to start formulating a PPP project. And what we do is we act as advisors to them. And we have all these guidelines in order to keep the pace of all the procedures required for a PPP project. For instance, we changed I used to work at the Ministry of Finance, and I moved to the Planning Secretary a year and a half ago. And from the Ministry of Finance, what we did was changing the PPP decree, which was the new decree was established by the end of 2020, and it was to bring it closer to the national investment public system, and that requires a series of guidelines and interpretations in order to keep things running smoothly. So what we do is we work very closely in official way and in an official way through WhatsApp or whatever means it requires, by meetings and everything, with the Ministry of Public Works, with Hacienda, the Ministry of Finance, and our PPP units, in order to understand a project in a comprehensive manner, in order to make the approvals to move very quickly and very comprehensive again. Thank you very much, Andres.
Thanks a lot, Adilio. Thanks a lot. That's another nice example about institutionalization and also about what we call this transforming central PPP unit with a relevant presence in the 3 main areas. And well, one of the benchmarks from a lot of years ago, one of the leaders in terms of innovating, in terms of institutional organizations, everybody knows that has been the UK, with a certain evolution precisely towards a more integrated approach between traditional infrastructure or infrastructure as a whole and PPPs. It's precisely UK. And can you Javier, describe a little bit these same points, the case of IPA in these points, the functions that you are covering as a PPP unit, and also with this view of infrastructure unit, in fact, no? But specifically as the part of a PPP unit, and share with us your views and how is handled these sometimes problems of coordinations or multiple units that I think that is a minor problem in your case.
Absolutely right, Andres, and many thanks to you and to the World Association of PPP Units for inviting me to participate in this key panel discussion on key central government PPP units. The first thing to know, as you mentioned it, is that my unit's governance structure, mandate, responsibilities have significantly changed over the past 2 decades. So we started off as a pure PPP unit called Partnerships UK, which some of you may remember, and that was back in 2000. PUK was a joint venture, was 51% private and 49% public. So it was a private sector entity from a legal standpoint with a public sector mandate. So PUK was structured as a 51% private joint venture to allow it to attract and retain, but also to hire and fire talent from the private sector. So PUK was in charge of developing and delivering the UK's Private Finance Initiative, or PFI program, which is still one of the biggest and most successful PPP programs in the world. So I joined that unit, PUK, back in 2007. PUK became Infrastructure UK in 2010. And IUK, Infrastructure UK, was not only a PPP unit, it was an infrastructure unit, 100% public, 100% part of Her Majesty's Treasury. In 2016, Infrastructure UK merged with another part of government to become the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, or the IPA. So Partnerships UK, a PPP unit, became Infrastructure UK, an infrastructure unit, and we are now the Infrastructure and Projects Authority. So I will answer your question very quickly from the perspective of my current unit, the IPA. So in a sentence, the IPA is the UK government's center of expertise for infrastructure and major projects. And there are a few things that I think make us quite unique, not only in the UK, but also internationally. So first of all, we sit at the heart of the UK government, reporting to both the Treasury, our Ministry of Economics and Finance, as well as to the Cabinet Office, the Ministry of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. So being at the heart of government allows us to work across the public sector with line ministries, procuring authorities, but also with other central units such as the National Infrastructure Commission and the newly created UK Infrastructure Bank. So being at the center and reporting to the two most important government departments or ministries gives us the time and the space we need to do and to think. What does that mean? So we are doers. We help prepare, assure, appraise, deliver, finance infrastructure programs and projects. That's normal. We deliver stuff. But we have the luxury of think about important things. For example, we help develop our infrastructure policies. We help plan and prioritize our infrastructure investment programs. We help standardize our processes, procedures, guidance, methodologies, contracts, and project documentation. So you need time to have this luxury to focus on not only delivery, but also the priorities of the country. So second, we have a hugely ambitious mandate. Our main objective is to develop the best performing infrastructure system in the world. So we are not only about projects or programs, we are in charge of the system as a whole. And we are not only in charge of infrastructure, we're also in charge of major transformational projects. Thirdly, as far as we are aware, we are one of the few, or perhaps the only unit in the world, which is involved throughout the whole project life cycle, from policy development, planning, and prioritization through to project delivery, financing, and performance management. And that for all PPPs and non-PPP projects in all sectors and at all levels of government. So we are truly a one-stop shop. And finally, we are very active internationally. We work, my unit, my team works around the world. We have operated internationally for over 20 years, working with overseas governments, multilateral development banks, think tanks, you name it. And we share best practice and lessons learned, good and bad, from the UK on infrastructure planning, financing, and delivery. Now, finally, I would say that an important role that is not very well known of the IPA is that we lead the UK government project delivery function. So it is recognized in the UK that project delivery is a core function of government. So civil servants have to have the core skills to undertake their projects. And this has to be certified and recognized internationally. So we help train and certify government professionals in charge of planning, preparing, assuring, appraising, approving, delivering, or managing projects. So in a phrase, we help professionalize the project delivery function in the UK government. So that, in a nutshell, is the scope of the work we do.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks a lot. So clearly, again, we are talking about covering all the spectrum of relevant areas with respect to quality assurance, from the planning, from the policy, through the quality control and so on. And obviously, I think that you don't have to face problems of coordination, in the sense that basically there is no other PPP unit in addition to no other infrastructure unit. And also, you don't have problems of coordination or integration with the general view of infrastructure planning, because you are handling as a unit the PPP as just as a possible tool for developing a part of the infrastructure plans, no, that you design. So that is a nice to be someday for many of the governments, like Spain, for example, and not only in Latin America or other countries. And the third factor for the design of a PPP unit would be size, resources, and funding. So we are running out of time. If we want to, and I would like, because I'm seeing already a number of very, very nice questions. So let's try here to be, it's not so, I mean, it's quite relevant, this area as well, but probably not so crucial and not so relevant to understand by the audience. So let's be more accelerate here a little bit. I would like to hear from the three of you before giving again the word to Anchor, which is very quickly, which is the size of your unit, how do you fund your activity, very simply, and then just describe to what extent it is a challenge for you capturing and retaining capacity and talent. Okay, so again, let's start with Catherine. Which is the size of the unit and how do you fund your activity, Catherine?
Okay, the TMP has more than 1,300 employees and an average annual budget of $350 million. Now, specifically, the PPP unit and program has 20 collaborators, the program director, a technical team with 13 technical, legal, and financial consultants, the operational coordination of the credit with the support of 2 consultants, and 4 consultants that support procurement and finance.
Good, excellent. And how about you, Adilio? What is the size? How do you fund your activity?
Well, we have right now 3 professionals at the PPP unit or the PPP directorate, and I work with 5 other professionals from the Public Investment Office within the Planning Secretariat of the Presidency of the Republic of Paraguay. And I'll have to say, considering also the hiring professionals we sometimes have, roughly $100,000 per year. That's exclusively from the national budget of Paraguay.
Mm-hmm.
And the risk or the challenge to capture and retain professionals is a huge challenge, not only, but mainly for PPPs, for public investment and other areas in our civil service environment. So it's very hard to keep, but what we do usually is to hire professionals by products, by specific productions.
Good, perfect. Catherine, I think in your case, regarding before asking Javier, regarding the challenge of capacity and talent, I like it a lot, the views that you shared with me yesterday when we were preparing the panel about how for you you manage that in the sense of giving training to the team and giving incentives to the team. Can you just share with us very quickly what is your views and takes on with respect to retaining capacity?
Yes. Regarding the challenge of attracting and keeping talent, I believe that it's useful to facilitate the team's participation in periodic training processes to update their knowledge in legal, technical, and financial matters. Warranty the remuneration if line with the market condition, and well as to promote for interaction of lesson learned with national and foreign teams. In the Colombian case, there is a low turnover of the team, most of which has been working in the PPP unit in the DMP for more than 10 years.
Okay. And Javier, being really very brief and going to the point, because Javier and I was discussing not yesterday but the day before. Sorry, not yesterday, the day before yesterday, only about this topic for half an hour. So, but I love the ways that you can describe this and your views about which are the key points here. So can you tell us, I mean, size, of course, and how do you fund, but especially your views about the challenge of capturing and retaining talent?
So just very briefly to complement my previous answer, in the UK, we are the central government unit, but there is also a subnational level unit. There are sector-specific units, and there are units also in the nation. So we do have to coordinate, and that's also a challenge. So in the IPA, we have about 220 full-time staff members, plus about 20 secondis from industry, plus access to a wider pool of subject matter experts. And I think it's important for a PPP or an infrastructure unit to have access to those secondis from industry and to a pool of experts to supplement their in-house capability and also to remain current with the latest developments happening in the private sector, new technologies, modern methods of construction, etc. So regarding our 220 full-time staff members, we have two types of professionals, each type with its own pay and grading system. So about a third of our staff are policy advisors. So these are traditional generalist civil servants. And about 2/3 of our staff, including myself, are what we call commercial and financial infrastructure specialists. So these are people who have worked in the financial and business services industry, in law firms, banks, advisory firms, or in the infrastructure and construction industry, in construction companies, operators, asset managers, and they bring their private sector technical expertise into government on a permanent basis. So in terms of attraction, I think we are in a good place. People want to come and work with us because of the reputation of the IPA, the caliber of the colleagues, the type of projects we get involved in, and also because of the fact that we can work at a policy, program, and project levels in the UK and sometimes also internationally. Retention-wise, it's perhaps a mixed bag. Policy advisors tend to stay with us on average for 18 months, for a couple of years, and then they move on to their next job in a different unit or in a different ministry. And that's how the UK civil service is structured, to allow people to try different policy areas, become very good generalists, and take with them best practice from one job to the next. Now, we also have the tools to attract and retain high caliber commercial and financial infrastructure specialists from the private sector. The specialists tend to stay with us for much longer. I've been working in the IPA and previously PUK for 15 years, same with my boss, etc., etc. So these specialists, they tend to have 20, 30, 40 years of experience in industry, and they are looking for a new challenge in their careers. So they come to government to apply their knowledge, not only to projects, but also to whole programs and to whole policy areas. And then finally, we work in a matrix model. We combine teams composed of technical, commercial, financial, legal, policy experts. So we are truly a public-private unit, or more specifically, an infrastructure unit with public-private skills. So we are able to understand the needs and the concerns of both government and industry.
Okay, how many people working, you say, in the PPP specialist? I mean, the PPP specialized team or people. How many would be? Only focusing PPP?
I mean, it's a difficult one because the PPP unit is within the finance team. The finance team is about 80 specialists.
It is not a separate.
Specifically, the PPP team is about 25.
Okay.
No, because as when we discussed, we apply the rigor of PPPs now to all the programs, so they are not only involved in PPPs.
Understand. So I would like to highlight for everybody in the audience one thing here, which is that I mean, there is not such as a challenge in infrastructure in a project and a project authority in UK, because among other things, or mostly, there is not, let's say, financial opportunity cost for the experts to become a member of the team. I mean, which is something that is not so common in the majority of emerging markets and emerging economies. No, so let me pass through the ball to Anchor, so Anchor can share with us the views of IDB, or his personal views about mostly and more importantly this problem of retaining capacity talent, and some other findings of the paper that we did together, and also the role of IDB with respect to this problem of capacity building and retaining talent in the region.
Yeah, sure, Andres. And I think like regarding size and resources and funding, we cannot try to develop the same teams and internal capacities in countries which match different size in terms of scope and size. And it is not the same arrangement regarded here today, let's say, for example, with UK, Colombia, and Paraguay, than Brazil, Jamaica, or Belize. And we may say maybe that the average PPP unit, based in the work that you mentioned, may have, let's say, in Latin America and the Caribbean, on average between 5 to 10 specialists. But this data doesn't add that much if you do not compare to the scope and the PPP programs. Basically, the most important thing here is to have a clear relationship between the mandate, the responsibilities, the objectives, and the resources that you have for this. Mm-hmm. See, it is kind of essential to have a PPP unit that has the sufficient resources and that are commensurate with the magnitude of the scope of work relative to the function that they have been defined. Precisely because of, as we have been discussing in some other occasions together with Andres and colleagues, the role of a PPP unit goes beyond project structuring, right? So if we try to size the results in terms of projects that are structured to the human capital that you have to have in place in-house, you may get to wrong conclusions, and you are not considering as you should the upstream role, the importance of planning, of prioritization, of the first initial stages of project preparation, and also the knowledge and the capacity building roles are as much important as the downstream role. Basically, what we think is a good practice is to create this kind of virtuous cycles between the knowledge generation and the capacity building to understand best practices and why you should promote or not in terms of PPP development, so that can fit to the upstream support, so enforcing and strengthening the PPP institutional and regulatory frameworks and all the manuals, methodologies, and all the different aspects that needs to be addressed that affects to the way that we structure the project. And through the experience that we get structuring projects, we get again some knowledge that can help to keep improving the whole wheel. So basically, we think that this is kind of the good practice to have all these together. And two important topics that can arise. Of course, you mostly cover all the important thing of attracting and retaining talent, which is a huge challenge faced by many countries and basically related to the nature of the civil servant role, and the role of the project preparation facilities such as us as the IDB that support in different cases and promote this virtuous cycle between the knowledge generation, the upstream, and the downstream support. So we in our PPP single window at the IDB, we support countries in all of those three areas. I think like there are some examples that can be mentioned today here with our colleagues Adilio in Paraguay, or Catherine on the DNP in Colombia, on also Javier, which we have a project preparation facility all together with the UK and the FDN in Colombia and the IDB. So it's basically on the nature of our support to try to promote this relationship between the knowledge, the upstream, and the downstream, and the importance of having this project preparation facility supporting countries that may have or may not have enough resources and capabilities to implement projects and policies.
I like a lot the last thing that you have explained, because that is, I think, the main idea of a central PPP unit, which is integrating in that unit the upstream and the downstream in the same organization. No, I think that's the core thing. So, okay, we want to leave at least 12 minutes for questions. So, listen, you have 10 seconds each of you just to give me maximum of 3 drivers, but it's just mentioning. I mean, it can be capacity building, it can be resources and having money to manage properly a team or whatever. 3 drivers for success of a central PPP unit. Catherine, 10 seconds.
Okay. I highlight the following 3 aspects that I consider and have been fundamental. First, to concentrate multiple functions around policy design, development of sectorial studies, project structuring and approval, and knowledge transfer. Second, to carry out permanent monitoring regarding the fulfillment of the proposed objectives and, if required, incorporate the necessary adjustment to achievement compliance. And third, to adequately incorporate the unit into the country institutional framework, avoiding role duplication with other PPP teams.
Excellent. Elio.
Well, I have to say budget, clear guidelines, and capacity building. That would be the shortest and clearest answer.
Hey. Javier.
I would say resources to attract, retain, promote talent. And this is not only about money, reputation, worthwhile purpose, training programs, exposure to colleagues, authority, responsibility, all of that matters. Second, capacity to do and to think. So not only the capacity to deliver and finance, also the capacity to think about government priorities, policies, planning, standardization. And then finally, the capacity to evolve and align the governance structure, the roles, the skills, everything to be able to adapt to the needs of the country. So for instance, in the UK, now our priority is to help the country to build back better, to tackle climate change, to strengthen the union. These priorities were very different 15 years ago and are going to be very different in 15 years' time. So we need to also be able to adapt.
Long-term view. No? Long-term view.
Absolutely.
Okay. So focus, long-term view. Okay. Excellent. Let's go for questions. Directly to Javier. Okay. Does IPA manage the PPP tender process, or does it only advise line ministers?
No, we don't support direct. We do support the mega projects, but what we do is we prepare the ecosystem, the whole processes, procedures, guidance for project preparation, appraisal, approval. The authorities themselves, they are in charge of preparing their business cases. That's decentralized. Then we centralize in central government the assurance, the appraisal, and the approval process. And then we decentralize again the delivery, the procurement, and the contract management. So to answer your question, no, we don't procure the projects. We set up the system, and then we can also advise directly, but only the mega projects, so the big projects. But they are not our projects. We support them.
This is very important. If you allow me to just elaborate here for everybody, this is the same case in Colombia, it's the same case in Paraguay, and it has to be the same case in any single PPP unit that wants to be central and transforming, which is that if they advise, I mean, if they participate in the execution of the deal, it's just because they are advising, they are providing assurance, but they are not taking the ownership of the proposal to the commission to approve the project, or the ownership of the tender process, or the ownership of interacting with the private partner. Because it is fundamental that one of the main roles, which is the project owner, remains with the project owner. Okay? Another one.
Here we say that we want to align ownership, responsibility, and authority.
Perfect.
Exactly what you said.
All right. Sorry, second. Are they local agencies of PPP of subnational governments in Latin America and North America? I can tell you, yes, there are PPP units within subnational governments, subnational governments that can be states, regions, can be departments, can be municipalities. For example, in Colombia, there is a relevant municipality in Medellin, if I am not wrong, Catherine. But it's like Anchor said before. I mean, you are not going to replicate in the municipality of Medellin, even if Medellin is a very relevant city, and a structure of the PPP unit team of within the DMP. I mean, is a narrower number of people with a more limited needs for policy and guidelines, more limited, but still they need, because among other things, they will have access to the, or sometimes they will have to follow policies of the central government, or they can use manuals and guidelines of the central government. But of course, it's not that there is, it should be in any relevant city with a many relevant PPP program, it should be a PPP unit. But the PPP unit could be one single person. That's a unit. Well, that's a unit twice. I mean, it's a unit and a unit. Okay. Anyone want to add anything? No? No? Okay, let's go to the next one. Did you ever face a political pressure in terms of selection? Wow. Who doesn't? In terms of selection of projects to be supported regarding provision of support, usually in the form of TA, I mean, technical assistance. What is TA? How to assure that PPP central units are fully independent and immune? Wow. This is for any of the three of you. Can raise the hand whoever have been working in a unit with no at all ever seen political pressure on PPP, I mean, in project approvals. Well, maybe in UK I would believe it, but in the rest of the world,
not the case in Paraguay.
Not the case in Spain.
Yeah, not the case in Paraguay. We are part of the government structure. We have our political leaders, and we have all these prioritizations and requests. That's quite normal.
Probably with the governance that you can have in UK, or I would say in Australia, or I would say in Canada, or maybe Germany, and a short list of others, you really don't have a political influence in approving a project. That would be my call. I don't know if you agree with this, Javier, but in the majority of other cases, it's difficult to avoid that never ever happen some political disruption. Can we go for another one? Jyoti, central PPP or state PPP units, you mean state here, you mean, for example, in terms of United States, I mean, you mean in a federal government? Or any of the panel members would understand better than me the question, because probably central government.
The difference between a provincial level, a state level, versus a central government level, yes.
State or subnational level?
Subnational, yes.
Okay. That depends on the structure of the. That depends on the structure of the legislature. Sorry, the legislature. The jurisdictional framework of the country. In CP3P, for example, the standards, there is a beautiful section in the chapter about frameworks, which deals about PPP frameworks. First thing is to know whether your framework is a federal or is a non-federal context, and then from there you can see to what extent the framework is centralized and unified or not. Typically, in a federal government, the transfer of powers and capacities to the states or regions in Spain, which, because we are almost federal in that sense, is quite high, is quite big, and to the extent that the transfer of decisions in terms of budgetary strategy, public financing is also transferred, you will have your own state guides and policy decisions. If that is not the case, correct me if I'm wrong in the three cases, but probably there will be a relevant role from a central government standpoint of policies and guidelines, mostly related to long-term fiscal sustainability and long-term infrastructure planning. Everything depends on the legal jurisdictional structure of the country. You can have any combination there. And there is nothing wrong or good. In Brazil, for example, there is a huge independence in organizing the plans, infrastructure plans at the state level. Therefore, the PPP units are very powerful at the state level. I don't think that is the case in Colombia or in Paraguay at all. And in the United Kingdom, well, depends, no? Maybe you can tell us something here, Javier. Are you mute, maybe? I don't hear you, Javier. Oh, you lost the voice. Do you want to add any point there, Anchor?
No, I completely agree with you. At the end of the day, it's gonna be dependent on the relationship with the national and subnational government. Probably the case of Brazil, as you mentioned, is the most I would say developed one in terms of that relationship, but it also has to do with size and scope of the agendas that they might pursue. At the end of the day, it's going to be it's a very big country. No, I don't know if maybe Catherine can tell us a little bit between the relationship between Medellin and the national government. May be a really interesting case to understand. But in the case of Brazil, as you know, you may have units such as the one in Sao Paulo pushing a huge agenda. That it's comparable to a single country to a single other Latin American or Caribbean country, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Listen, I'm just taking a look very quickly because we have only 2 minutes left. I like this one. Okay. No, let me share this one, Jyoti. Other misunderstanding between PPP unit and fiscal unit within the same national policies. So I like this one because a PPP unit is not necessarily something different than what you call a fiscal unit. I mean, the body that will be the ente rector, the core center of decision for long-term fiscal sustainability could be the most relevant central unit. So it depends on one of the functions is to deal with fiscal management and link it to PPPs. And that could be incorporated into the PPP unit, being the PPP unit precisely incorporated into the fiscal team of the Ministry of Finance. So there is no need for differentiation between a PPP unit and a fiscal unit. Okay?
So, Andres, we need to wrap up, and I just want to thank the panel. Very interesting discussion. It's really, a pleasure to learn from each of the PPP units. Such information is, we don't get a chance. But I invite everyone. I'm sure everybody has a lot more questions to go to K and from meet and greet. You need to exit this session, and you will see the tab for meet and greet right at the top. And then you can meet Andres and the panel over there. Of course, in the future, we can have more discussion and webinars from WAPPP. And of course, you can reach out to Andres and Sophia. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time and your participation.
Okay, so panelists, if you can accompany me to stay a little bit more. So in the case that somebody else wants to keep on with questions, we can go to the meet and greet and then to the CAINFRA area, okay?
Perfect.
Bye.